That was terrible. G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff, Ukraine War Update for the 28th of January 2026. Much better. Sorry for the terrible start to what is very sober and terrible news. Of course, the war continues, but of course, bad news for the European warmongers. They are losing support. Now, of course, this is a slow and inevitable decline, as war fatigue is a real thing that has always happened throughout history. The longer the war lasts, the more fatigue. However, historically, Russians have been able to outlast, well, except for Afghanistan, most of the time, Russian war fatigue takes a much longer time. Europeans, of course, as part of their strategy, no doubt, spent a long time building up Ukraine, hoping to hold out so that war fatigue would set in early, hoping for mass casualties to drive home the horrors of war that would inevitably cause another collapse in Russia, like maybe not as bad as 1917, but definitely as bad as either the Afghan debacle or the early other conflicts, such as the Sino-Japanese conflicts. But they didn't expect that Putin would be onto them so soon and be prepared as he was with the Chechen wars. Now, of course, in Chechnya, political pressure did get to him in the beginning, and of course, a lot of that had to do with the Russian strategy of shoot and advance, and then try to hold ground, was fundamentally flawed because he was fighting people who were trained in the very tactics, and also trained in the very tactics Russia had used successfully in its foreign training tactics, though themselves have never really considered if they would ever have to fight their own, shall we say, liberators. So when they had to fight their own aka liberators, they realized that they were never prepared for that. And so Putin redesigned the Russian army, and then, after outrage, which many claim to be false flag, but after many investigations, people found indeed, right, that the AK liberators were actually hell-bent on not just Chechnya, but all of the Caucasus. And so Russia did what any other country would do, and it is defend itself. Now, Europe poorly calculated. Now, of course, there is videos out there on the alleged mathematics on war, and it is alleged that war can be calculated, but not to the nth degree, right? There is always the unknown factor. Now, the unknown factor in the case of Europe is the collapsing support for Ukraine war, not just here in Australia, but many countries around the world. And of course, the only thing the liberal establishment do is say, oh, it was reported by Russia, therefore it's fake news, and move on. But European Parliament commissions have found that they are in fact losing the public opinion war, but very slowly. Now, they were winning for so long, up until about mid-25. Now, since mid-25, there's been in a slow and steady decline. But once they lose Poland, that is it, right? For now, they have the majority of support in key states, right? They have mostly the liberal establishment, though Germany, they are definitely losing the propaganda war. Now, in some states, they're already below 50% support. But of course, like I said, in Germany, the majority don't exercise their power, so the establishment still has a lot of support from its key constituency. Now, once its key constituency, aka college students, realise they're the ones going to war, no. Even worse, when Poland realises they're the front line, that it's not going to be a war fought in Ukraine, predominantly, though it would most likely be fought predominantly in Ukraine. But ONS missiles will be used against European cities as punishment, and Russia will, of course, inevitably lose, but that is all part of the Russian strategy. They will go down and sink the Titanic and its sister ship, and the horse he rode in on, and all she wrote. The Russian sore loser strategy. You destroy us, we destroy the world. And the liberal establishment just wants to call their bluff. Now, maybe it is a bluff by the liberal establishment. Maybe, you have two chickens racing each other head on with their masks down and their horns, and they're just racing at each other, and they're going to go, what? But so often when chickens collide, they scratch a few times and will back off. So hopefully this is just the scratching stage, and like chickens fighting, they will realize that if they continue, they're both KFC. Because the inevitable winner of the war between Europe and Russia is China. The United States will be forced to bail you bozos out simply to stop the rise of China in Europe. But of course Europe wants the rise of China because they want their trillion-dollar deals. They think that better to be second place to China than last place to America, or some Cocoa Cuckoo Puffs Trump arrangement syndrome of the liberal establishment. That they could prolong this war to drag Trump down. But I don't doubt that Trump has a strategy. What it is, apparently it is his own way of slowly wearing down the Ukrainians and Russians. And as we get closer to midterms, maybe that's when the political pressure will count. We shall see. But while we wait, Europeans, of course, are suffering a terrible economic awakening that if they don't do anything soon, their economy is puffed, right? It takes sometimes years for economic fallout, but if you're not producing, you eventually, if you're not producing real, tangible outcomes economically, eventually, as the number of unproductive rise, the inevitable fall begins, such as and that is where Europe may be saved by the collapse of China, but only saved from itself and not, their own stupidity, is at fault. Betting on China was a huge mistake, and a lot of Americans realize that. But try telling Europeans anything, they are crazy. Coco, it's like telling a lizard, you should eat your vegetables. You live longer. And the lizard will just blink at you. That's arguing for liberal. They just don't understand. No sprechen Sie English. So, even as you show the war maps and say, look, Russia's made a little bit here and a little bit there, but and they'll say, yes, but nothing significant. And each day, the Russians keep making a little bit here, a little bit there, but again, and eventually you go, oh, look, we pushed them back at Kupiansk, but Russia's gone back into Kupiansk, this time from the south, and this time they are, deep strike into the center of Kupiansk, but will they hold it this time? Remember last time the Russian commanders deemed that it was not worth holding against the last Ukrainian offensive and let them in rather than suffer mass casualties. But I think now that Ukraine has made its objectives clear, perhaps Russia will want to hold the high ground and basically but give up the strategy of the Russian bear trap when it's doing so well for them. It would be a difficult decision for any field commander, especially when he probably has orders, right? You cannot be as creative as you want to be in the lower ranks unless your orders say be creative, but if you fuck up, you find out. So we'll see what the strategy is, not both for Kupiansk but for Lyman soon, whether or not this is going to be a full offensive, whether they're going to push south. There will be a breakthrough inevitably. They are grinding the Ukrainian positions. How long this grinding will last for could be all winter. But the massive winter offensive never launched. Instead, it's a series of spiked attacks where Russia will put pressure, predominantly using drones and missiles, and rely on the slow collapse of the Ukrainian lines. Now, the slow collapse does not always look obvious, but, they are moving through the south here of Peshnovinkia and will soon control it all. Now, they control all of Ivanpilia, but they don't control, and they advance, but only a little bit here. But once they push the Ukrainian, I think they left the road open to push the Ukrainians out here. It's not working, so they're going to push them anyway. Now this little, they've moved up, of course, up to the edge of the village here, and here, and for now, nothing here, but they are filling in the gaps. They have advancing in other areas, and grinding, only small advances. They have again crossed the rail lines to set up on Zelensky and Zelensky, but here they still have only minor gains, nothing in Roddy, only minor gains here, a little bit of gains here with what's the Russians soon to push the rest of the Ukrainians at least to the rail line. I see the Ukrainians are back trying to retake the rail yard, unsuccessfully, of course. Stop thinking that call to arms is your training program or something. What is their obsession with fighting over rail yards when they should be defending? Because Russia's advancing on Zelensky. They were down here, now they're up here. They've taken the military base on the outskirts. They are pushing up here, into the little supply line down here, which is, of course, gone, right? The 15,000 they put up here probably trickled through. Well, is trickling back through here. And, of course, Russia's trying to push up here, and not much success. They've had no pushback. They've seemed to have stalled here, switched to here. Now, given the Russian tactic is to not continuously attack for more than what they deem too long on any one point, so they want to draw the Ukrainians in, grind them, but not for them to settle in and be evenly distributed. So the Russians will use their firepower to draw Russians will use firepower, right, to lure Ukrainians into defending some villages while they grind others, right? But they'll move their attacks. They'll sustain attack in big battles, like you saw with Provosk and Kupiansk, where there's no disengagement, but in that curve, they'll still move, 200-300 different units, points of contact, right? They'll move 2 or 3 units at a time between each point. So wherever the Ukrainians have to spread their numbers and can't cover their losses, so they capture river crossings. They're moving up on Zelensky. They still haven't pulled the pin on that, but they are definitely pushing down here. The street battles continue while they shell other outside areas. Now, the amount of artillery and fighting has shifted. Now, overall, there isn't as much down here as there was the other day, but there's still, hitting areas, right? Attacking supply lines, attacking the feed of troops and ammunition to the front. All the time they're attacking drone launch points. And of course, as we look at the overall map, most of the time it is... Oh, where are we at? Yeah. There's not much going on. But yeah, passenger train. Well, there's no regular passenger train service. This is Ukrainian military, right? You're in the middle of the war. You ain't having a regular passenger service, okay? Particularly on a train line that runs straight through to the Russia, straight, right? Straight through. Right. It's a supply hub. Right, where else are you going? Right. It's going through to there. Okay? Look at it. There's the train line. Right? Where's it going? There's a little spur there, but that's about it, right? It's a supply. It's a troop supply line. Okay? And it's heading to Sivovsk. Okay? Don't tell me they're running regular... Oh, they're probably running regular trains, no doubt, right? So that Russia can't pick which is... immediately pick. But they'll see which carriages are running low and see how regular they are and where they go, and they'll set up a drone ambush, and when that heavy train comes through, they hit it. Doesn't take a genius to figure it out. And of course, there's other areas where Russia attacks every day, particularly Kiev. Well, Odessa doesn't suffer as often as other towns. But of course, Kharkiv didn't get any attention today, but there was air defense activity outside of Kharkiv, indicating that, same with Kiev, that they decided that they won't report the attacks or successes because Zelensky is panicking. Right? Show you a train, say passenger train, they show you a train, but of course, anybody with an ounce of common sense would realise you're not running passenger train services in a war. And policemen, yes, policemen in military, yes, of course. Staged photographs. But, 4 people. Who were they? What were they? And what was the train really carrying? We'll never know. Now, of course, there were other drone strikes across and aerial bomb attacks, and they always claim it was civilian, never a military target. But, of course, the center of countering disinformation is, of course, part of the National Security and Defense Council has denied that Russia has captured a town today. And meanwhile, Open Intelligence claims troops of the Ukraine's volunteer organization did not show Russian troops on the map. Now, this is when they're talking about Ukraine's volunteer organization Deep State, they of course are talking about this map. Right? This is from Open Intelligence. Okay, it's supposed to be neutral, but they're volunteers. for this map, all these top markers are put together from observers from Ukraine. Right? These stories from Al Jazeera come from Ukraine. Now, the number of houses without power has risen from 600 to 718,000, although it did allegedly rise as high as 800,000, and it may have fallen. But there were more attacks, right? And the European Union is providing more generators. Don't forget, these are not your little portable jetty that you throw outside the back every time you get a power out, just to keep your internet light and the fridge going. No, these are big boys to power multiple blocks at a time. These are a truckload of usually KV 1.2s, sometimes KV 2s, but sometimes you'll get the special ones that they use for the air defense. These big 4 kV generators, very specialized equipment. They on a big 18-wheeler, and a lot of them they have to, of course, because they are suffering. Population is starting to suffer war fatigue, and if they cannot keep the Ukrainian population pacified, soon their protests that were in the thousands will turn, like Iran, from thousands to tens to hundreds to now millions. Right? That's Iran. Ukraine is still only in the thousands protesting stage. In fact, more people protested in Ukraine today than in Minnesota. Right? The biggest American protest was actually only about 1,000 participants in, and that was in Philadelphia. 10,000 people protested Trump in a country of 300 million. And somehow the media makes it out that that's a huge blow to Trump. It's like, Trump derangement syndrome. Wow. So liberals suffer Trump derangement syndrome. In other news, Russia and also had power outages, according to TASS. But yes, they are also working on it. Now, Ukraine has claimed yet again another strike, and it was, of course, why is the Ukrainian gas and oil company organising strikes against Russia? They're telling you their quiet part out loud. This is all about Ukraine's attempts, right, to steal Russian gas and oil, right? They're just sending messages, to Russia. We're going to keep destroying your gas and oil, It's for the profit of Ukrainian state oil, you look at it, right? Ukraine's lost all the gas and oil access here, right? Lost their share here, lost their share here, right? They've been squeezed, right? Russia's saying, you want to lose your last bit of gas and oil, you keep fucking around. But Ukraine says, no, we'd rather lose 1 million men than lose gas and oil profits, Just don't think for a minute it's about liberation, okay? But of course, Finland allegedly thinks that it can allegedly bring about an end to the Russian war by influencing Putin by getting Xi Jinping to reduce its cooperation with Moscow. Hey, Mr. Dragon, I'll give you a gold coin if you piss on Putin. The dragon takes the gold coin, pisses on you, and says, thank you for your contribution. But China has put out many statements saying it's willing to work with Russia to bring about an end to this war in favour of Russia. So, Finland has fucked around and found out. They got pissed on. They're lucky it was only metaphorical piss, of course. But Slovakia, of course, is pushing back against the ban on Russian gas and oil, citing they're fucking nuts. We lose gas and oil now in the middle of winter? You fucking nuts? Right? There's no way. It'll take years to break from Russian gas and oil. And remember, they are already buying Russian gas and oil through third parties, right? At least Slovakia has the fucking guts, the fortitude to say, this is not our war, right? This is not in our best interests, right? And you want peace with Russia, you got to stop, but of course, in this world, people will get bored very quickly without conflict. That is a problem of human nature, right? We're going to have issues until people can start reconciling beliefs and stop thinking that a one unified global order is going to be nothing but a gangster's paradise. Okay? You concentrate power, where are the gangsters going to be? Now, Zelensky wants to disrupt the peace talks now he's talking about attacks on Russia here. Russia calls those planned attacks, those planned strikes on Russia, particularly those terrorism, as that Zelensky is targeting civilians and disrupting the peace process by carrying out military strikes during peace talks on Russian gas and oil. And he's made the order official, right? Yesterday, the defense minister made an announcement, but the Ukrainian leader has made it official in alleged talks, right? Where he's allegedly talked. Now, this is yesterday in a public forum in allegedly again, in a public forum in Ukraine, where he allegedly green screened. No, it's not allegedly. But you can see that it's a fake audience. That is, come on, just do a file search, just do an image search, right? You said see, right? You're just going to say it's Russian disinformation, fine. Most people are tuning out from the Ukraine war, fine. You want to be told you're winning all the time, you are a loser. Okay, as soon as Ukraine loses, there are going to be so many thousands of disappointed people who wasted hundreds of hours of their lives, right, making Ukrainian agents of influence rich on YouTube platforms, listening to British propaganda about the Ukraine war. It's the same with all the people who sat there listening to BBC. Now, fortunately for the British, when the Americans entered the war, they no longer had to lie about the war, or Churchill could breathe a sigh of relief after 6 months of kissing up to Roosevelt, making all the promises that Roosevelt demanded, because Roosevelt held out until he got everything he wanted. He basically let millions die so he could have his way, and then killed millions more that didn't need to die, and then killed millions of civilians, but never mind that, Zelensky is nowhere near that horrible, but he's still someone who's prolonging war and escalating war to get his way politically, right? And in the world of politics, he is seen, and by many liberals, as just defending his country, just doing the right thing by his people. But he's not Ukrainian. They are not his people. He is a Russian. He is a Jew. He is politically aligned with only a minority in Ukraine. He's banned all his opposition parties to make sure that he cannot lose power, but he's facing internal struggles. So his own political allies have been called out time and time again as corrupt, one by one. Though here we have a Ukrainian parliamentarian who is yet to be sacked. The investigations into her continue, but they cannot find any substantiating evidence outside of Zelensky's friends saying that she is corrupt. So she probably is, right? If the Zelensky's friends are saying they're corrupt, they're probably involved too, and they're trying to sell her out to save themselves. The problem in Ukraine, if you arrest all the corrupt, you have nobody left to run the country. That is how bad things are in Ukraine. And Ukrainians know it, but they keep voting anyway. They don't do anything, right? They don't put politicians on notice or anything. No. All they've done is call for killing more Russians to basically distract from the fact that, Zelensky claims they got it up to 35,000, even though reality is that he's downplayed Ukraine's own losses. That is, in fact, claiming not just the number of Russians killed or wounded, but the number of Russians who leave the battlefield when their time is up, right? When the Ukraine, right? They are deliberately, right? When Russia recruits 35,000 troops, they say, they must have lost 35,000, not counting whether or not they're dead, wounded, or battlefield, demobilizations. So, but however, I think Russians know, right, that if Zelensky escalates, he only has two options. Reduce range to increase accuracy, or increase the amount of ammunition expenditure. If you don't have an unlimited supply of ammunition, well, it may be impossible to increase ammunition supply. Therefore, the only strategy you have is either you have new weapons that you have yet to use, or I doubt it, they have that much weaponry. I think this is Zelensky saying, I'm setting the right goals, but no, you're not. All you're doing is inviting Russia to use their Onsk missiles, which they don't want to do, but the Germans, however, realize that Russia has more. Right, Ukraine says Russia doesn't have that many Onsks and they're not that accurate. But Germany, however, has seen two fundamental changes, right? The energy war strategy is not working in Europe's favour, right? Europe is about to face staggering losses, right? This year they could potentially lose $339 billion in self-inflicted damage by rejecting Russian oil. This is the cost difference between the Russian oil and the oil they're buying. Now, this is allegedly, right, that European market accounted for all oil exports, right? Sorry, Russia accounted for 25% of all oil imports in the EU, which has plummeted to just 2% by looking at the numbers on the Russian official websites. You can look up all the oil consumptions and all the things and do your own maths. Yeah, they're now paying, on average, Europe is paying $9 more per barrel than they were back in 2021. As a result, the amount, every year they've made losses, right? And for 2022 to 2024, total $311 billion. And, overpaid by $339 billion. It's this money going to India. But of course, the war profiteers who fund the British and German and French governments and the rest of the EU and liberal establishment will just keep waving those Benjamins in front of Europe and saying, we might trade in euros one day, you decouple from the US. Simply, Europe has to, eventually, to try and make up for their losses, right? They can't keep affording US support. If the US is going to take away their toys, and of course the Americans only doing that because America doesn't want to be dragged into your wars of perpetual ego and perpetual stupidity, right? You had your fun. You fucked around, you found out, you should have cut your losses, but they just can't. So Germany has released a report on the Onsk missile that Russia, of course, has advanced the technology of the Onsk missile, right? They have a more advanced version, the Onsk 2, right? It'll be it's being used, of course, in January as a demonstration, right? that they don't know how many will be upgraded or by when, but as a demonstration of power, Germany acknowledges that their own intelligence services are really saying that Russia did cripple the Lerov repair plant with one ounce, where the F-16 parts were being stored, as well as drones, right? No, of course, the F-16s, of course, as you know, only touch and go in Ukraine. They come from other countries, then they touch down to refuel, and then they go, carry out their anti-drone missile operations, and go back to their rear. Now, Russia can't penetrate all Ukrainian defenses, but by tapping at its edges and going after other areas, it's just as effective, right? If instead of destroying F-16s on the ground or anything like that, they're making it so expensive that the long-term damage is done, right? Ukraine loses more money, Europe loses more money, Russia's pointing out that you're losing money, and eventually more and more people wake up and realize that the mobile missile system is, how many will get through? That's what they're now thinking, right? They know that Russia could deliver an Omsk missile to a city daily. They don't know how long, but they know it's in the thousands. You won't last 1,000 days in a war. A major war won't go more than 1,000 days. The only reason why Ukraine is over 1,000 days, or nearly getting to 1,500 days, is the fact that Ukraine is only a slow grind. If Ukraine was a fast grind in which you had a missile strike a day of the scale of the Omsk, you would have no Ukraine by now. It would be blackened. Right? Most Ukrainians will be on European borders, and Europe facing a refugee crisis of 16 to 20 million. Right? Zelensky would be dead in the crush, either by his own retreating military. He's fleeing the country prematurely. His business partners will not. You see Israel or anybody able to keep Zelensky alive. They have their own troubles with Netanyahu, where even now Netanyahu in Israel, ironically over support of Ukraine and his failures to stop in Gaza. Right? A lot of Israelis have said, right, we'll let you, you're defending Israel. We accept that. We don't like you, but you got a peace deal. You can stop now. No, you can stop now. A lot of young Israelis are going, well, he doesn't want to stop killing us. Like, we only gave you limited support. What you doing? Netanyahu has bitten off now more than he can chew. He's now universally hated by about 60% of Israel. He is maybe not done, right? Because the last thing Israelis want is to admit fault, right? They admit fault, they everything collapses, right? But the PR war is done. He's cooked. And this happens, it's going to happen with Zelensky. It happens with every world leader who reaches that point. And this is what I'm to my point before. Europe was banking on Zelensky being likable and lastable, right? That by this time, they should have had a offensive. Now, I should have brought this up before. Let's see. Weather in Ukraine today, it's still freezing. Gonna get worse. Okay. Next week is going to be worse than this week, right? We're at below zero, right? To way below zero, and then end of January we'll start to see this, which is the coldest month. Yeah, we're in the coldest month. we will now. This is peak winter. The Russian offensive, which should have come 2 weeks ago, did not eventuate. I think that was Putin at the request of Trump, saying that if you red line, and Putin got the message. But yes, Putin also sees, and this is the golden opportunity for Russia to lay out its final stages of the war, which will last 3 to 6 months, and then it'll be a long, slow healing process. There'll be a Cold War between Europe and this is what they want, right? The intelligence agencies know they need to justify their existence, right? So this is not just about the hot war in Ukraine, but the Cold War for the next 10 to 12 years afterwards. Now, of course, we don't know what's going to happen in China. We don't know what's going to happen in Iran. We know that America has assets in place now. Ayatollah has made his usual rhetoric. Trump has not blinked. This is not the first or the last time, but I think Trump has told Israel no strikes. For once, Netanyahu appears to be listening, but of course he's not listening to Trump over Gaza. Trump and the others over this Gaza peace conference, particularly Turkey. Turkey just wants an excuse to occupy the Middle East. Israel is fucking stupid, right? Turkey will betray them at every opportunity like they did before, right? But Israel's probably hoping that it'll be like the last time in the Ottoman Empire, where Israel's the jewel in the crown, therefore has special treatment because they're such collaborators when it comes to the caliphate. And that's what you see, right? Israel cooperated with the caliphate. That's why they're so unwelcome and so unliked. And you've got to remember, the Arabs used to love the Israelis until the end of the caliphate, because the Jews were part of the occupation of the caliphate. That's why the Arabs hate the Jews. They sided with Turkey. And if they keep siding with Turkey, they are just, again, the problem is Gaza is more Turkish than people want to admit, right? It's, again, the result of the fact that the Gaza ports were key coming and going points for the Ottoman Empire. So, of course, a lot of the people in Gaza are actually Turkish, not Arab, as you could tell, right? They are. Now, of course, this it's just one of many. There are many conflicts that are either going to fizzle out or explode. But I think Russia doesn't want this one to blow up. And that's the state of the war. It's a hand grenade with only one finger on the pin. One finger on the lever. The pin's in the hand. Trump is trying to force Europe to put that pin back in. Zelensky's standing in the way. And of course, Trump will eventually have to either push it through Zelensky, which will upset the Israeli and Europeans. But whether or not, I think Trump's banking on Zelensky taking out by his own people, and Ukrainian opposition party will emerge with enough strength and support of the military to win this war. And that's where we're at. We're speculation to end this war, right? But of course, it does everybody well to end this war. So thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Please watch it. Please like, share, and subscribe. And of course, support me. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my box, buy my merch. I appreciate you. Number one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.